Okay, we're back.
Hello, hello.
Hey. Wow. You know, it's hard to believe it's April already.
I know.
I just want to do some level setting here. We're recording this
On Good Friday.
on Good Friday, a week before we're releasing this this audio. Easter weekend. There's a lot going on this past week. I'm sure a lot will go on between now and when we release this, but we'll address that if needed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there will be something else that will come up to seize the
seize the day,
seize the minds and hearts and emotions of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So we just watched an interview between Derek Brose and Chris Hedges.
Oh, boy.
We used to listen to Chris Hedges a lot in the past.
We did. Yeah.
And I never was 100% on par with him, but
You're not 100% on par with anyone.
But that's true. I'm not 100% on par with Derek Brose. There's a lot of things I disagree with Derek Brose, but there's a lot of things I disagree. A lot of things I disagree with Chris Hedges over, especially now because I knew that just intuitively I knew that he embraced the COVID narrative, which this interview blatantly showed. I think Derek Brose was kind of like, what?
Yeah, it's like, dude, I could have told you that.
But Chris Hedges also believes in climate change, that he believes the mainstream narrative of climate change. I do not believe that climate change is the issue, that carbon is the issue. I believe that the earth is being destroyed through poisoning by pollution, through generations and centuries of
benign neglect.
Benign neglect, but by
actual pollution,
industrial capitalism and industrialization of the world, right? To think that we no longer have industry in the United States is a lie or is a falsehood. Not a half hour from where we live is a plastic plant that releases hydrocarbons, which are harmful from the standpoint of they're part of a release of toxins. The toxins are the problem. The plastic is the problem, and so people that believe in climate change, they go, oh well, pollution, plastic pollution, that plastic that swirls around in the ocean, that great whatever they fucking vortex thing they talk about, off the coast of Alaska or whatever. No, I'm talking from extraction through you throwing it out. Okay, that's the problem. But anyway, so I got off onto a tangent. So Chris Hedges believes in climate change. He believes in the group called Extinction Rebellion, who I we both feel are just complete fucking assets that are there.
They're assets, yeah.
They're there to help people get arrested.
Yeah, they're there. They exist to help to teach people how to be arrested properly.
Right.
I mean, this is ridiculous that Chris Hedges would even. It's become such a farce with him that I'm not even sure that it's. I'm not sure. It almost feels like he's part of the clown car. Like he's part of the circus.
I know.
Because for him to say he actually used the term super spreaders in.
But he used it in context of there's super spreaders in the White House.
Yeah, so he was being what's that term?
facetious.
Yeah, he was being facetious, but more than that, he was being, I don't know, ironic. I don't know. He was, he's really intelligent, and so it's hard for me to know when he's using his high intellect and his understanding of language to maybe talk down to someone. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
I think that
I'm overthinking.
I think that he does. I don't know if he believes in the concept of a super spreader, but he was using that phrase to describe what the fuck is going on in the White House, and I have a feeling he was referring to Trump as opposed to Biden, even though he's no friend of Biden. Mm-hmm. He probably applies that super spreader moniker to both presidents.
So this is why who basically, for anybody listening who cares, for all of our 2.5 listeners that we have who actually care, I've basically taken over the platform. I've taken over Book of Hours, and
it's been a coup.
Yeah, it's been a coup.
It was a bloodless coup, I'm afraid.
I've taken it over, and since I've taken it over, like the video essays that I've done and the work that I've done on the platform has really blossomed.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I was able to help you build up to the point to where you could blossom.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if I had been bros, I would have, stood in front of Hedges and would have said, so what do you think about Catherine Watt, the legal expert, the constitutional legal expert that has pored over the documents that prove that the Department of Defense is behind the deployment of a bioweapon? In fact, in their own language, in the contracts that the Department of Defense has made with Big Pharma, in their own contracts, they describe it as, an other transaction authority, which is a vehicle which basically states the very thing that you took the Obama administration to court for, which was the violation of posse comitatus, which is where the military wages violence against the people, and there's a law in place to keep that from happening, and yet it happened anyway. How do you respond to that?
Right.
Like, I would have just laid into him and been like, justify in your own brilliant mind and all of your academic prowess and everything, justify in your mind how the violation of posse comitatus did not happen during the COVID experiment, during the COVID operation, which is what the military defines it as. It is a operation. It is an operation to deploy countermeasures against American citizens and also the global population. So how can you tell me that, this act, this posse comitatus act, which was established all those hundreds of years ago to protect us from the military waging violence and murder against its own people, how can you tell me that didn't happen when the Department of Defense is out here continuing to this day to deploy a countermeasure? Like, well, this is what baffles my mind. Like, this is what gets me to a point where I'm just like, oh, but what?
But Julie, the elites, the Obama administration, I know he's it's like he goes so far with something.
It's like what Catherine Watts said. Nobody in this country is willing to admit that the Department of Defense, that the military has waged a campaign of murder and, at the very least, disability on its own citizens. Yeah. This has been a coup. Yeah. And everyone's just frozen.
Oh, another coup. I see.
Oh, right. This is everyone's just frozen in place. They're unwilling to acknowledge the fact that their own country has waged violence against them.
The thing is I've always felt like...
when you're in our position where you have had to... I've had to
reinvent myself at least 6 times.
Dozens of times. I don't even recognize my 40-year-old self, let alone my 30 or 20-year-old self.
I was reinventing myself from grade school or junior high into high school.
And so this
and
idea,
it's been going since then.
And so what happens to countries and what happens to the citizens within the countries that are bombed to oblivion? They have to create something new out of the rubble. They have to reinvent themselves. And that is something that you and I have had to do our entire lives. Mm-hmm. We have had to reinvent ourselves in order to survive. And, that is a characteristic of a country that has had war waged on it. So basically, we have been dealing with and responding to war being waged on us our entire lives. Now it came to they took off the blinders and they pulled away the curtain and they said, now we're really waging war on you. And you and I were like, oh yeah, that's our average Tuesday.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we handled it so much better than anyone else.
Well, I don't think they ripped the blinds away or the curtain away, aside. I think that they hid behind the curtain as much as they've always been. They
were very open about lockdown.
Well, sure, but
they were very open about a psychological campaign.
Yes and no.
No,
yes and no, because it was all under the campaign of fear, like what they always do. But I guess what I'm trying to say is they hid it in a bunch of garbage, right? They said, oh, COVID, oh, this virus that's out there and it's deadly, and oh my gosh, and a lot of people bought it. Most people did.
Right, because those people weren't us.
Most people bought it.
But most people weren't us,
right.
Where that was like my average Tuesday.
Right, no, I get that. No.
Like, I'm literally telling you that I grew up in an environment where every day was like, just take the word COVID out and put something else in it. And it was like, sure. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. And if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. And if you don't do this, you'll never have money. And if you don't do... And it was just like a constant barrage of authoritarian threats. Yeah. That's my life. So that when COVID happened, I was like, I got this. This is no big deal. This is just another authoritarian power grab, another military operation, another excuse to try to kill me, Yeah. So good luck with that,
or
because
keep you down, right?
Right. So good luck with that, because I literally, look, I'm kind of, in you as well, but probably me more than you, are kind of a badass. It's like you have to be a bit of a badass to survive this thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you also have to be able to, read between the lines and see things for what they really are. And, we have been, we're going to get into some subjects in a moment, but even some of the things that we're going to cover, we're seeing them as operations, not as what they're being reported as, right?
Right.
And
they're operations. Yeah, exactly.
And we feel that the United States is undergoing a color revolution. That
right.
The kind of revolution that's been going on all over the world that the United States is responsible for.
I know, right?
Right.
Like what's happening in San Francisco.
Right.
Is a color revolution.
Right. I mean, the last one that we saw was an attempted one that didn't. I don't think it happened. I don't think it was successful in Hong Kong.
Exactly.
Because COVID then came along and kind of erased it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were doing their best. And they were using, alternative tactics and blaming it on, movements,
right?
That undercover. And we're seeing this in other places again now here in the United States,
right?
But COVID was definitely the first step in a color revolution.
So we listened to the All In guys, right? And
right.
So Jay Cal, who's the moderator, his name is Jason Calla, whatever.
Right.
And he said something like, I'm a big proponent of coming in from another country. Coming in from another country.
Austerity?
No, coming in from another country. I can't think of the word. Why am I going blank? Because my mind is going a million miles a minute.
Well, okay.
Immigration.
Oh, immigration.
Okay, so I'm a big proponent of immigration because it will give other people an opportunity.
Well, no, but it will give the United States the opportunity to build something.
Right. By using, untapped talent is basically how he's looking at it.
No, he's not talking about, people who are migrant workers. He's talking about, like Chinese, Indian, South African, whatever. Like
basically what we have now.
Tech workers. Tech workers from other countries.
Which is basically what we have now.
Right, because...
Speaking of which, like... Something that you mentioned to me earlier, given that you work with mostly Indians, it's like they actually have a national holiday today, Good Friday.
Right.
Like they didn't have to go to work and they still got paid.
Right.
Meanwhile, the United States, which pretends to be this, this Christian country, doesn't give their workers Good Friday off and pay them.
Right.
But India does. India does do that.
Right.
So what the fuck? So anyway, so Jake Howe was saying that, he's a big proponent of immigration because he believes that, especially for the tech sector and all this, which is what they're a part of, that they'll be able to tap into some talent and boost the economy or whatever.
Right.
Okay. So, but I'm thinking to myself, and then in the same breath, like the very next segment of their podcast, they were talking about how things were so bad in San Francisco, and they were shocked and appalled about, this open air drug den that is now San Francisco, and bodies laying in the street and all this, terrible stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, it's the cartels that are a part of this, and the cartels come in through loose immigration policies. Okay, so do you even know what the fuck you're talking about?
No,
you fucking rich billionaire. Do you even know anything about what you're talking about?
No.
Like,
that's just it. They only know certain aspects of what they're talking
right,
about. Right. They can talk all day about finance and money,
because it's
and building a product.
As much as I am all for people legally coming into this country and finding a better life for themselves to escape oppression from their other country, from their birth countries, I'm starting to realize that those birth countries, the narrative around what we have been manipulated to believe is that they're a lot worse than they actually are.
Yeah, right.
Whoa, so I'm fine with immigration policy. I'm fine with people coming in, but I'm not fine with cartels, and I'm certainly not fine with six-figure incomes being rubber stamped into our country when people who've gone to school for their engineering degree and paid the price and done that get shoved aside for somebody who just gets rubber stamped, and thrown on an airplane and comes over to San Francisco to work on the next unicorn app or whatever. Right.
Well, and then he successfully avoided talking about how a lot of that talent doesn't even need to come here. Right. And
I know. There is such a thing as remote work, right?
And it's becoming even more remote.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I work with a lot of folks from India, and they all live where they live, right? And the biggest issue for them, and it's a big issue, I won't deny that, is that they have to sort of meet more or less U.S. hours, which is completely there's like a 12-hour difference practically.
Wow,
it's huge.
That's
some of them actually work U.S. hours, which means that they work through the early morning hours and into
So for that, I have a lot of sympathy for them.
Right.
Some of the other bullshit that you told me about, the way that they've undermined you, and they have literally made comments to you that if you were to reverse it and make those same comments, you would be so fired.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be a question.
Right.
But they have been able to get away with the most insulting things and
egregious behavior.
Whereas there is no way you as a white man could have ever gotten away with it.
Right.
So the fucking hypocrisy and double standard in the corporate sector now because of DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, is so.
It's all about identity.
Right. It's all about identity in the corporate sector now.
Right, because it's
not about merit.
Right.
Or what your talents are or anything.
No. It's because that is easily conforming, right? I mean, that's a very conformist way of looking at things, right? And a corporation is, if anything, all about conformity, right? And so identity politics fits right into the idea of a corporation.
Right.
so they can make themselves. It's sort of like greenwashing, right? Greenwashing being the environmental, painting an environmentalist picture of what a corporation does for the environment. It's like, going back to those years I think it was the 80s when it was Exxon ran these commercials, and it's like, do people care about nature? Yeah, people do. And it was like Exxon Corporation. It's like, you're an oil company. You ruin the fucking environment.
I know. It's like Exxon with a green with a green X.
Right.
And suddenly it's a green company.
It's a green company. Well, so that's greenwashing, and
I know.
And so this is sort of the social political equivalent, right? And
that's my line.
Sure. Yeah, we're drinking tonight. 'Cause
it's Good Friday.
It's Good Friday. Every Friday in my book is a Good Friday, but this is especially good. So yeah, I mean, it's all about how, what you are, not who you are.
Right.
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 And this allows them to look like they're diversifying their workforce, when in reality
they're not.
They're not. It's still the same class of people. It's just they have different colored skin, or they have a different culture, or they, whatever.
Right.
Right. And that, we covered a program that the White House released about the biotech industry, or the I forget what it was called, the bio. The bioeconomy or something like that.
Yeah, the bioeconomy.
And there was this one company where this black woman was heading it up, and she's like, basically touting their diversity, but she said it outright. She's like, we have the most diverse company at the C-suite level. And it's like, the C-suite level, all of you assholes have more privilege than I ever had.
Right.
You all have like fucking, high-end degrees.
They get like six figures a year.
Right, and they didn't get there with a bachelor's degree.
No.
Or a high school equivalency test.
No.
They're all fucking at least MBAs, and if not, they've got a PhD or something. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
come on.
So DEI is a big problem in corporations now, because, and I feel bad for like middle management or managers who are in charge of projects, because they have to meet certain criteria, and they have to walk away. They have to shove aside really good talent in order to meet the DEI.
Not always, because
I know, not always.
I slipped
talent
through the
is there. Yeah, that's true, but that's because the COVID shot, the bioweapon, killed a bunch of people.
But here's the other side of it, though. Here's the other side.
It's nice to benefit from the Thanks, DoD. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, COVID.
No. Thanks, military.
Thanks, military.
Thank
industrial
you, the military.
Complex. Thank you, the military.
Military. You know what? When people say I love the military, I say so do I. They have no idea why I would say such a thing.
Right. I heart the military. No. The thing is, this is all talk on the outer edges. This is the public-facing bullshit. When you get into
it,
when you get into the inner workings, or just the day-to-day, I should say,
it's not that.
You don't see it.
No, you don't.
You see it in some of the corporate meetings.
That's because it's a lot of box checking,
right?
And so you don't necessarily have to follow up with box checking.
Now, you will run into people that you work with who believe in it. They believe, they're the torchbearers, right?
So they have the she/her like on their bios, on their LinkedIn pages, and and all the fucking acronyms and whatever,
right? The pronouns and all that.
Yeah.
And they're the true believers. However, they can be true believers all they want, but unless the corporation is 100% behind this, which it's not, nothing's going to really happen inside of the organization. It's all outward facing. It's all PR, and it's all bullshit.
Right.
And the people that lift up, or like the C-level diversity officer.
Sure.
You'll see that, like, I remember I was watching, like, one of the, I'm a contractor, meaning that I will take on a job as a consultant doing a specific type of work, for a given period of time. Okay. And I was working for a very large mortgage company that you've seen advertised on a lot of sports channels. It has something to do with like a vehicle that takes you to the moon. I will leave it at that. Anyway, and there was this video that we had to watch as part of the onboarding, and the chief diversity officer was like going on about all this shit, and I was like, I put in the chat, can I get a copy of this video? Crickets.
Oh, so that explains some things.
Yeah, because it's all just like bullshit. Well, they don't want to. They don't want. They want it. They want you to think that they are doing all this shit, right? That's like positive and right.
So
But
it's like
they're
they'll stand up
not.
there. They'll
They're
stand up there.
not.
So the chief diversity officer usually makes 6 to 7 figures
Oh,
a
and
year.
she was so fucking woke.
Right, 6 to 7 figures a year is usually of a
Gross.
different persuasion, whether they're trans or lesbian or a different
Believe
color.
it or not, believe it or not, she was cis straight
cis straight black woman.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So there you go. That's
from the hometown of this company, too.
Well, of course. So yeah. So I mean, obviously, right? Considering
they also had a
But what
disabled mascot too.
Sure. But what I'm trying to say is that these people get up there and they say, we are, we're inclusive and we want to make sure that we diversify our hiring practices and give everybody an opportunity. And we're going to really, work hard at and all these box checking things that they have to do. Meanwhile, they're addressing 10,000 people in this sort of TED Talk environment, atmosphere environment, and they're looking out over the staff and the people, and they're telling them this. And meanwhile, the people who are the employees are looking around at each other, and they're like, I don't see any trans people. I don't see any lesbians.
Right.
I don't see any black people.
Well, that particular company had a lot of black people.
Yeah.
Because of where it's located.
Right, because of its location.
But they were never...
Rhymes with Metroid.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's in a state called that rhymes with Michigan. But the thing is that there are very few people. There is diversity in the corporate sector at, like, say, the level that I'm at, where it's like the inner workings, like the professional class, the professional people. But in this particular company, most of the diversity was seen at the sort of like call center level.
Sure. Where they make, where they have to work really shitty hours and make minimum wage and only are allowed to work anywhere between 20 and 32 hours a week so that they can't get benefits.
Right, exactly.
That's the diversity that they're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's such bullshit.
It is bullshit.
The whole corporate structure is bullshit.
Yeah.
But right now, one of the things is that it should be on everybody's, top of mind, and should be the thing that everybody is focusing on in the world, whether you are in the corporate sector or whether you are in, a regular person like the poors, like us. You should be like focusing on the international health regulations. And the reason being is because the international health regulations will affect the billionaire class just as much as they will affect, the penniless class. And so this is what baffles me to no end, is that no one's paying attention to it. People are just going to let this, unelected organization run roughshod over not just your freedoms and all that, but your operations of your businesses. And they're going to force, these really successful businesses in any sector, tech sector, you name it, to follow procedures and adopt practices, which is going to cost the CEOs, it's going to cost them money. And of course, everything's about, the bottom line. And it's just going to, it's going to be like COVID, but a constant world that never ends. Like, just as a corporation or a company, and I hate capitalism, but I find it hilarious, if not infuriating, how the capitalists and the venture capitalists and the C-class that run all these operations and run all these companies aren't paying attention to their best interests
Right.
and their bottom line with the IHRs,
Right.
the international health regulations
Right.
that are being proposed like now.
Well, that speaks volumes, what you just said, because it's not that they're not paying attention to them. It's that these things are being deliberately hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, I guess so.
And
I guess so.
Yeah. And because they, even though they put this shit out on their websites and it's all accessible, right?
Yeah, it is.
If you talk about it, they'll say, "Oh, that's a
That's
that's
a health thing, and we shouldn't really question the health.
That's
blah, blah,
right.
blah, blah.
Yeah, don't question the science.
So when you lose your
or they call you a conspiracy theorist, or they say, "Oh, that can't be the case."
Well, or
that's not right.
I mean, that's why you just have to speak their language and say, okay, so you're okay with your $10 billion a year business basically having to file bankruptcy in 3 years? That's cool. That's fine. That's fine with me because I'm not, I'm not pro-capitalist. So if you're okay with your $10 billion,
I don't work for you either, So
yeah, if you're okay with your business, your very successful business, basically having to file bankruptcy in a few years because of these regulations, because they will affect you as much as they will affect the poors, then if you're okay with that, then whatever, know.
Well,
it's like
so. Getting back to the guys from the investor class assholes who do the
All In show.
All In show, the All In podcast.
So, side note, pause, just, for our listeners and our followers, we have decided a while ago to get out of our comfort zone and listen to people that really infuriate us so that we can learn something.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's wherever I go anywhere on social media, it's either like the most awful vitriolic language and attacking language that just makes me go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that because I'm into peace and love, right? So I don't want to be a part of your weird anger and hatred. So no. And then another aspect of social media is the catastrophization of life.
Right.
The catastrophization of life. Like everything's a catastrophe. So they're catastrophizing.
How will we
I know, it's like every single person has become Wolf Blitzer. How will we recover? Oh my god. So I don't want that either. So I just have to end up listening to the people that I can't stand. And I have to get out of my comfort zone so I can learn something.
Well, and by that we don't mean like listening to Alex Jones.
No.
We listen to the mainstream or the people who were
He's a
influenced
character.
by. Yeah, I know he's a caricature, and he's a, whatever. I don't even want to get into that. But but so
why? Because we don't even listen to it, so there's no reason to.
Right, exactly. So there's there's these mainstream, upper class pundits, the investor class. Some of these guys are billionaires. They've worked they've invested or been part of
the investor class.
The things that you've actually used, like it rhymes with ace hook.
Right.
So and and they whatever, and they're involved with things like quitter, places like that rhyme with quitter.
I know, and we're doing all the things I absolutely hate. I hate when people change the words of things.
Yeah, but
that just really annoys me.
Yeah, but we're making jokes about it.
I know, we're making jokes.
We're not saying we're not using the
we're not calling it the quack scene,
right, and all that shit, right?
And the what is the other one? The pandemic or whatever it's called. Yeah.
It bugs me too.
Oh god, bugs me to no end.
We're eating dessert now.
We're eating our peanut butter cups with our wine, with our French wine.
Our Isis Ray, Enid, utter bad. I don't know.
Enid Butter Bay.
I can't speak pig Latin. So we're listening to these guys, and I don't even remember my point that I was getting into.
Who cares?
Yeah. We'll probably come back to that.
They're so rich. They don't even care.
Well, the thing is they have a perspective that is both informative and infuriating at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
and so a lot of people on social media can't get past the infuriating part.
Right.
But I can. Like, I don't know how many times I've been like, oh my God, this was such an amazing episode. I learned so much about finance and money. And I copy the link to the YouTube podcast and I open up my Twitter page or I open up my, other social media pages and I'm about ready to hit paste and I go,
Yeah,
I can't do this because everybody that I'm connected to on social media is a catastrophizer.
Right.
And they won't be able to get over the fact that these guys offend their worldview and they won't be able to learn anything. So I don't do anything.
Well, here's the other thing.
So much is kept from you people because you refuse to open your eyes.
Get over yourself. Stop tripping over yourself. Stop hitting yourself. No. The thing that infuriates me about them, I guess what I was going to get into was that they are just as vulnerable to the mainstream bullshit, and specifically like what we were talking about. I said, this whole thing with the COVID narrative, they hide this stuff in plain sight. Right before we got into the whole thing of like, your company's gonna go, belly up because of this shit. So what I was getting at is that they are just as affected by the mainstream talking points and the idea that this was actually like a real thing, as everybody else. They're not privy to some insight. This is I think what a lot of people believe, that these people like these guys, these are not the World Economic Forum going dudes. These
They
guys
don't even talk about World Economic
they're just
Forum.
as critical about that crowd as, even though they hang with Elon Musk, right? They're just as critical of the World Economic Forum and ESGs and all that shit as we are. Okay, so that's not even like part of their worldview. Because we all know, because what we've been saying all along is the World Economic Forum is the marketing wing of what's going on. They're not.
They have no power.
Right, and these guys, kind of prove that point. And so they're of that class, but they don't even talk about that shit.
Ever.
Right?
No,
and
because it's worthless.
And so they talk about what's going on in the world like you and I do, in terms of like they believe what's on the news.
I know, it's pretty hilarious. But they also have insight into like the global financial systems because they're part of it. And so it's funny, especially to watch them like hurl insults at each other
About companies that create it or whatever.
It's hilarious. I learn a lot from them though.
Well, they're not worried about digital currency.
No way.
They talk about it, but it's like it's not even a viable thing.
That's because they know that the talent isn't there.
Well, they know that AI is coming, but it's like the AI to them is like there's not enough investment going on in it to make it happen.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
they are so like they get it. Like they're like, we invest, our companies invest in the talent. And they would know firsthand if digital currency were a real thing.
Right. I
Like
never hear
they
about that.
would know because they would invest in the talent to make it happen if it was
Right.
worth their while. They're
Right.
not investing in it because it's not worth their while. Why? Drum roll, please.
Because it doesn't happen.
There's no talent.
Well, there's that too.
It's not happening. This is another thing that I was talking about earlier today with you when we were at brunch. I was like, I just don't feel that people are really understanding the way the world really works. You constantly say things like, it's the mundane, it's the mundane,
Yeah.
it's the mundane.
Yeah.
And so this is, and then I'm witnessing like a serious break in reality. I'm witnessing a serious break in user nation's ability to put two and two together. So on one hand, they will say, oh my God, look at the rise of death and disability within a certain class of people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay, and that part is true. And then the very next sentence says, oh my God, we're going to get central bank digital currency. And they're not putting the two together.
But they are in weird ways. They're conflating two different ideas that have nothing to do with each other. Sort of like, your chocolate is in my peanut butter.
Right.
And my peanut butter is in your chocolate.
Okay. All right. Speaking of chocolate and peanut butter and all that, that's actually a good example.
I know, I was inspired by the Reese's.
Let me simplify the level of cognitive dissonance. I go to, let's call her Mary Sue. Mary Sue! All of the chocolate factories in the whole world have blown up. Oh my God, that's terrible. And a bunch of people died and they're out of work and all the chocolate factories have blown up. That's a terrible thing, Mary Sue might say.
Mm-hmm.
And then she turns right around to me and says, do you realize that they're going to replace chocolate with bread? I mean, they're going to replace bread with chocolate? Oh my God, they're going to replace bread with chocolate. And I'm like, but I just told you that all the chocolate factories in the whole world blew up and a bunch of people died in the chocolate factories and there's no one to make the chocolate. And then she turns around and her response to me is, oh my God, we are going to have chocolate replacing everything. It's going to replace bread and coffee and cat food and oh my God and milk and water, and we don't need chocolate. We need fruits and vegetables and bread and coffee, not chocolate. And I'm like, but I just told you that the chocolate factories all blew up.
And there's nobody there to make chocolate.
And there's nobody there to make the chocolate. This is the central bank digital currency conversation that I've been trying to have with people. And I'm just like, no, they're just like, nope.
Will it
they
happen?
don't understand technology.
Right.
That's not how technology works.
Right.
It doesn't just grow on trees and then magically appear in your bank account.
Right.
It's oh my God! It's a complicated engineering process, and there's no talent.
Right, exactly.
There's nobody funding the talent,
and the money is going into AI, if at all, and not into blockchain. Now, will it happen in the future? Yeah, probably. But not now.
So you know who's going to build the blockchain?
The AI is going to.
The AI will build the blockchain, but you know who else is going to build the blockchain?
Who?
The toddlers.
Right. Oh,
the toddlers that are being born today
Julie,
are going to build the blockchain.
It's going to be those darned immigrants coming over the border of Mexico.
Maybe the immigrants. I don't know. No, but what I'm saying is that when all of the
they're going to take our blockchain jobs away from us.
When all of the chocolate factories have been blown up and all of the people who make the chocolate have died, or a big chunk of them have died, then chances are you're not going to get chocolate.
Right. So the toddlers are going to build it, but the toddlers aren't going to build it now when they're toddlers.
They're starting to learn.
They're going to build it when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s.
Right, but they're teaching them now.
Right, yeah. Well, that's because they have to, right?
Right, they have to.
But here's the thing.
Whatever. Toddlers. Oh my God.
Okay, so like I said, I mean, it's not going to happen now. And here's the thing. It's like for the last 20 to 25 years, I have been hearing about the Internet of Things. And do you see the Internet of Things in your daily life?
I do not.
I do not either. It exists in small ways, in small places here and there, and it's invisible, right? Mm-hmm. Your refrigerator is not reading the contents and telling you that your milk is spoiled.
Right.
We do have a water heater downstairs
that could do it, but we chose not to.
That can hook up to the Internet of Things, and it can, narc on us when we use too much hot water. But you have to hook it up to the goddamn Wi-Fi, and I have no idea how to do that. Right?
Right.
And I'm not going to go out and fucking hire somebody to come out here and go, hey, say, worker, can you hook up my water heater to my Wi-Fi? First of all, because of where we live, people would go, huh?
Yeah.
And second of all, we can't even get anyone to come out to,
like do anything
around here.
And then
you would think that they were all rich and didn't have any projects to, like, they didn't need any projects.
Well, so now you're sounding like a right-wing conspiracy.
Well, yeah, but at the same time,
be careful there.
I know, be careful there. I'm going into that territory.
No, actually,
but no, that's the way they act. It's like,
I know. Well, okay, no, seriously.
But
you're preaching to the choir. Like,
right. Well, they don't want to come here where poor people are.
Right. So we had this situation where, like, when I moved here by myself in 2018, and JP came a week later with a 40-foot U-Haul truck with all our crap, with all our stuff. I was like, he had been here in May. I didn't show up till August. So we had a lot of weeds that were growing around the house, and people were calling the
ordinance officer.
The ordinance officer, like, oh my God, can somebody please cut this, lawn across the street? What's going on? We know that the house is sold,
right?
But why isn't anything being done? And it's because we were 3,000 miles away. So I finally got here, and I immediately go to the neighbors who have lived here for
150 years.
150 years.
No, I mean they've lived here for generations. At least 100 years. Yeah.
Generations, and they have family and friends and people that know them by the first name for multiple generations. And I was like, do you know anybody? No, we don't know anybody. You don't know anybody who could cut my lawn. No, we don't know anybody. You've lived here for 150 years and you don't know a soul. You're related to the person next door to you practically.
Maybe,
you don't know a soul that could come and help me, like,
maybe the guy that works at the pizza place on the corner could do that for you.
I know. It's like, that was the response I got. I was like...
Literally, that was the response
That was literally the response I got. I was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
The guy that works at the pizza place has time to come over and weed whack my yard.
In general, like, it's just like, you're telling me you don't know anybody. So this is basically the general attitude of Pittsburgh.
Right.
That's my first impression of Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, first impressions are lasting impressions. And so that is my general attitude of Pittsburgh, which is, people who are either not very bright or just incredibly lazy, or they just don't want to help somebody that's different than them. I don't know.
But
either. We are not like that. That is not how we operate.
Well,
and so it was very off-putting to me.
People get things done because they've been here forever, right? There are close family and social ties.
But not everything gets done, though. I mean, look around.
Well, look around. But see, the thing is the folks across the street, they had a fucking tree taken out of their backyard.
Yeah, so how did they get the tree taken out of their backyard within 5 minutes? And I had to, like, ask practically everyone on the block to help me chop down a few weeds.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. Right? Now, this was not, this dude was not on the up and up for the most part. He just kind of came, like, did it, whatever. But, it was kind of a sketchy thing. But at the same time, it's like they got it done. It's because they know people, and they're not going to tell you, right?
That's so weird.
It is weird, right?
It's so fucked up.
When
they themselves were complaining about the fact that the weeds were growing too high.
See, this
like, help me, help you, help you, help me.
This is social media.
Yeah. This
is what I'm going to get back to. Like, we got on a tangent, but I think if we can bring it back, is this is User Nation, and this is the people. This is sort of an inverse version.
Yeah, this is really like that. Oh my God, central bank digital currency. Yeah, but we just killed all the engineers that would build it. Oh my God, central bank digital currency. Yeah, but we just killed all the engineers that would build it. Oh my God, central bank digital. Okay, I'm done. I'm off this merry-go-round. Like, you guys aren't listening.
Right. So, and these guys, the investor class, are not talking about that.
They're not talking about it. They're just being...
Well,
let's invest in AI and each other.
That's because they know there's nothing to invest in. The closest they come to talking about it is Bitcoin.
Right.
Period.
Yeah, and that's nothing.
Right.
That's not CBDCs.
Well, it's blockchain currency, but it's not at the scale. It's not at scale with what is required to roll out an entire currency.
No.
Like the dollar.
This is true.
Right?
You cannot roll out an entire currency to replace the dollar.
And
if you
the
want to
Fed
roll
doesn't have... I mean, the Fed can do it, But the
if you
central
want to
banks can
roll
do
out
it,
a
but-
currency to replace to replace the dollar, you literally have to destroy everything. You literally have to break everything down to rubble.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that isn't the goal.
No, that's
But
that's that
There's
feels like,
enough there's enough companies and enough corporations out there that are going, oh hell no.
Right.
Like they're just not gonna let that happen.
well even this company that I was talking about before that's in Eat Right, they even though they've been working to like destroy Eat Right in their own way to revitalize it, in their words,
Destruction through revitalization.
or the other way around, or whatever the fuck.
No, yeah, it's destruction through revitalization.
Okay.
It is.
The reason that Detroit is mostly flat, like there's no more neighborhoods, but the sidewalks and the street lights are still there, is because the founder of that organization had a lot to do with that, thinking that they'd be able to rebuild. I guess, I don't know, but they were left holding the bag when the COVID thing happened, because here they are, they're reinvesting and they're like building, like they're rebuilding old skyscrapers in downtown Detroit, right, and their own headquarters, in fact.
But they don't have anybody to live in the skyscraper.
Well, now they can't
work in them.
because nobody's working in them. They're like making people come back, but they're still doing the whole thing where they're like, some people can come these days and other people come other days, and
Such a wank fest.
It is a wank fest. So on one hand, they're going along with the narrative and the bullshit because monkeypox or whatever the fuck is the the flavor of the week, right? But at the same time, it's like it's going against their own
Best interest. Yeah, their own
right?
bottom line.
They spent lots of fucking money that they're not going to see come back.
Ever.
They're not going to see a return on their investment in any way possible.
Yeah.
And so, this goes along with like what you were saying. It's these companies are going, oh, hell no.
Right. When it comes to, really, you want me to help destroy the entire economy to bring in a digital currency?
And that's what these guys on the
I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's what these guys on the All In channel or podcast kind of get at too, where like they're talking about,
No, I actually learned something from today's episode.
Oh my god, today's episode.
I learned something.
I know, but
Just
they're like
the one.
The one guy was talking about austerity. Like in a way to like fix the economy, and I'm like, fuck you.
Oh my god, yeah.
You won't feel it. Oh,
well,
they were talking about how the wealthy are going to feel it when they increase taxes, and then everybody else is going to feel it. Like, oh yeah, well, okay, you might get your
okay, so
you'll get a splinter in your finger, and the rest of us will have our legs broken.
Right. So you're not helping the point that I'm trying to make.
Well, so what?
Is that we have to. Like, I'm so, disillusioned and so over the catastrophization
what I'm talking
of the
about,
attitude on User Nation that I have to go places that make me feel uncomfortable in order to learn something.
That's fine. You do learn something, but you also learn about where these people live.
You mean to tell me that people who have basically been spoon-fed privilege their entire life are assholes? Oh my god, I'm shocked. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you're going after the obvious. Yeah, of course they're going to say the most draconian, authoritarian asshole things. That's what they are. Okay, yeah, can we move along from that? Because I'm learning something else from them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm shocked, You don't
allow... Oh, so I'm not allowed to bitch about the things I fucking hate about these people?
Okay, you're not on... Well, I would say that we're both neither on User Nation, but I know the pulse of User Nation probably better than you, and it's like, I'm a little over rich people bad. Because I already know rich people bad. I already get it. Rich people bad.
I'm going into the nuance of rich people bad.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's one thing to say rich people bad, it's another thing to say why they're bad or what they're saying that makes them bad.
Oh, sure, because, they basically, the only reason that, this circle jerk that takes place every Friday called the All In Podcast.
It is a circle jerk, isn't it?
The only reason that they are as wealthy as they are is because of austerity, because they invest in things that build up privilege in certain sections of the managerial class and the C class, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. No, they're horrible people, but they understand like all of the different facets about the economy, especially, and in some cases politics, although they don't get everything right in that sense. Friedberg does the most because he's the most kind of like anti-government one of the four, right? So he probably gets that the most. But I learned something from them, and I'm just saying that I learned something. That's it, and I'm not here to get into my like echo chamber of like of that. I'm here to learn something on this planet, you know what I'm saying? So
planet or platform?
Planet.
Okay.
Planet, platform, whatever. I'm just over a lot. I'm over a lot.
I'm overly confident. I'm overly no. I'm just I'm not overly confident.
No, you should be overly confident because you're always the smartest person in the room at any given moment. So,
well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Despite getting smacked down a moment ago about being Miss Captain Obvious.
Well, okay, so you were being Captain Obvious, but you were basically like reciting the complaints of User Nation, which basically has left me completely unenamored with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get on it rarely.
No, I know you're not on it, and I have been on it less and less and less and less and less and less and less because it's like every time I open it up, it's like, oh wow, somebody else is catastrophizing some bullshit that isn't even real.
There's
God,
there's an image.
I can't even like deal with these people sometimes.
There's an animated GIF on Giphy. That is a dumpster fire. Okay.
Oh, I know. I love it.
It's not just a dumpster. It's not just a dumpster on fire. The fire is actually animated. It's a dumpster going down a river, an over-flooded river, while it's on fire.
So I thought that was a real thing.
It is a real thing. Check this out. That dumpster was going down the Ohio River.
Oh my God, that's local.
Not a half mile from where we live.
It's local.
And the only reason
no wonder this area is so fucked up.
Right? The only reason I knew that is because I recognized the signage of the road that it was going through, right? It was going past. And I was like, oh my God, I live near that.
I know.
The fire is animated.
Oh, the fire is?
The fire, yeah. So it's a dumpster on fire floating down the river.
That's awesome.
And I mean, it's great because it's like this is not just a hot mess. This is a hot mess flooding.
Right. And not only is this a hot mess, and not only is it a hot mess flooding, but it's a hot mess flooding like a block from us.
Right.
It's literally like a Giphy was literally made like, around the corner from where we live.
Right.
That's hilarious.
You go through the tunnel and
there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Well, what? I know, just like it's a weird way to be famous, right?
Well,
look how fucked up we are.
Well, it's so funny because I posted it.
Okay, so that's definitely something that I found out about Pittsburgh when I first moved here.
Okay.
So, like, when I wanted to go get my hair highlighted, like, a couple of times, and they kept turning it orange.
Right.
And finally, when I found a stylist who could fix me, she was like, oh, I see you went through the hazing ritual of being a blonde Pittsburgher. You had to be orange for the first couple of times, and, that's part of the ritual, I guess.
Wow.
But that's one thing I learned. Like, when I went to the first stylist, she was like talking about like how fucked up Pittsburgh is, like how stupid, like how really dumb people are here, and also like just how fucked up. Like, there's no like oh, come on. What do you need, like, clean water and infrastructure for? Just let your neighborhood smell like sewage and all this.
Right.
And she was, like, you know, fucking up my hair and telling me all this. And I was just like, oh, my God. Where have I moved to?
Right.
Like, what is happening?
Right.
You know?
Well...
I'm used to San Francisco, where it's like literally like the streets are glittering with gold.
Right. Well,
You know?
I know, especially in the Mission there, that one area, they have all sparkly sidewalks.
Well, there were sparkly sidewalks in our neighborhood in Alamo Square.
Yeah, I guess there were. Well,
There were.
So, where did that stylist end up moving to? The one that fixed your hair. What part of the world did she end up
She
moving
moved back to the Bay Area. She moved back to San Francisco. She's like, I'm out of here. She hated Pittsburgh.
Walnut Creek,
which is like an hour east of San Francisco, but whatever. Like, she was just like, fuck this. She has a husband in finance. She's like, we're out of here. You know, we're moving back. So yeah. So you go through the ritual here, and that's what Pittsburgh is like. Pittsburgh is like, we're famous for being fucked up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be in an area like that. Like, I don't want to be like in a situation where people are famous for how fucked up it is.
Yeah. Well,
you know, and how compliant and complacent they are. It's like if your entire, like, it feels like living in an institution, like living in a crazy house, you know, and you're the only sane person.
Well, that's why the wraparound services are so big here.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, like, the neighborhood we live in, McKees Rocks, which is just nothing but it's just saturated with just like draconian, like, wraparound services that basically cannibalize human bodies for existence. Like, it's a horrible thing to witness right outside our front door pretty much daily. You know, so we were going out of town and we signed up with this online organization, which is probably based out of San Francisco, called Trusted House Sitters.
Not New York. Yeah.
And oh my God, the liberal, like, privileged class were so traumatized coming here. They were just like, and so that's why, like, we have a friend coming from the South who's going to come visit us next month. And he's just like, and I'm just like, we're not going to bring him to the house. We're not going to do it. We're going to just meet him in Pittsburgh and go to the bar or something, because everybody that comes here is just like, oh my God. Remember our friend from San Francisco who came here and stayed with us? We moved here in October of 2018 and she came in June of 2019. And when she got here, just the look of horror on her face because of the poverty and the rubbled out streets and the blight and just like how everything is just so ugly. It's just so ugly here. Yeah. Like, she was so traumatized. Like, she was just like horrified. I can't imagine what she told like everybody when she went back to San Francisco. Oh my God, they live in hell.
The funny thing is when we, now photos lie, right? Yeah. So when we took photos of sort of like our view outside the front porch, like, hey, we're hanging out on the front porch and, here's some houses and, whatever. And everybody fell in love with this one house that's across the street, this big yellow house, because it looks like, like when you're a kid, the way you draw a house, it looks like that.
Yeah, because everybody's an idiot. Like, they don't really realize that the entire block is just blighted homes.
Well, because we didn't show
everywhere.
That. We didn't show that. We didn't. To be fair, we didn't show that.
Well, no.
And that yellow house is not the nicest house, but it's but see, what I was getting at is it is a symbol, right? It looks like the house you draw when you're a kid. Right. Right? Pointed roof, peaked roof. So you got a triangle and a square, right? And that's the house, right?
Because everybody's a child.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody wants to see what their ideals are, right? Their ideal situation might be. But when she saw those photos, and then when she gets here, she saw the reality. Right. And so the photos lied. They painted a picture of a place that
even though I tried to warn her.
Well, yeah, but you can never really prepare anybody.
I warned everybody here
we told the people, we told the two, gay dudes, the two gay liberal dudes that were supposed to watch our kitty in our house while we were on vacation, getting away from this place for a little while. That it is what it is, right? Yeah. And they were worried about being jumped, and I'm like, don't worry about that.
That's not what you should be worried about.
Just-
You'll be appalled by all the garbage. You'll be appalled by the blight,
and
the weeds,
and the recovering, addicted, zombies. I'm being unkind here, but I mean, it's
they
like,
are zombified, though.
yeah, it does feel that way, and I'm not, blaming them for anything, but everything feels really sketchy.
Right.
They're not going to jump you. They're not going to hurt you. They're not even going to break into your house.
Right.
They're just wandering around trying to survive.
Right.
You know?
Meanwhile, we meet people who are just like, it's the best place in the world.
Right.
And I would never leave. And I was just like, I can't wait to leave. I can't wait to get out of here.
So, but the thing is that like we tried getting somebody. So they left a really shitty review.
Not like they left a passive aggressive review.
Right, but it was shitty.
It was we took it as shitty, but I have a feeling that the general population, if they were to read it, they wouldn't read it that way. But we did.
Yeah,
we read it that way because we understand the language of passive aggressiveness because we're from San Francisco.
Well, and they were from Seattle, so you
so
got
there
that
you go.
West Coast kind of snobby bullshit attitude, right?
Yeah.
And they were of the upper middle class professional types, right, that we mixed with in San Francisco, so we knew their MO.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when they wrote what they wrote, we understood. We read between the lines, right?
Yes. Backhanded compliments, things like that.
Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Then we tried getting another person with another system. So this was house sitters, trusted house sitters, and then we went to Rover.com.
Oh, was it Rover or was it Trusted House
No,
Sitters?
it was Rover.com. And she
sure it was
came
Rover?
over here and she called the house adorable, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
well, she was the second person that called it adorable.
Right.
Yeah, the first one was when this couple who lives in the Pittsburgh area came over for one of our
Probably one of the wealthy suburbs.
Yeah, they live in one of the wealthier suburbs, I guess. And they came over to our house for one of these anti-lockdown parties that we had, because we were gonna buck the system and screw the state and be like, no, you told us to lock down, so we're gonna have a party.
So fuck you.
So we had a fuck you party to the state, and a bunch of people showed up, including this couple from this kind of wealthy, and you could tell they just had like privilege written all over them and stuff.
Yeah.
And the wife said to me, "Oh, your house is adorable." And I just wanted to slug her. I literally wanted to punch her in the face and say, "How dare you call my house adorable? You fucking privileged piece of shit." Like she was being so condescending because it's in the poor neighborhood and we live with the poors. So I just wanted to slug the fuck out of her. I was so pissed off when she said that to me. Like, it still lives with me 3 years later after all this time.
And so this woman comes in.
Yes, and so last year, a few months ago, right, when we wanted to go out of town, this woman came over from, it was either Trusted House Sitters or Rover.
It was Rover.com.
Rover.com. Yeah, it was Rover.com. She was just going to come over here and watch the cat for a couple of days while we went out of town, right? And she said the exact same thing in the exact same tone. Oh, your house is adorable.
Right.
And I just was like, this isn't gonna work.
And she backed out of it.
Oh, she couldn't get out of here fast enough. She was just like, get me out of here.
She's like, okay, and she took our keys and everything, and then like a day later, she's like, oh, I can't do it.
I can't do it. Aw, typical.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, typical passive aggressive.
Right.
So.
And she grew up where I grew up. Right?
Yeah,
and she
Southern
grew up
California.
she grew up in the nicer side of where I grew up.
Yeah, so fuck these people. I'm so tired of privileged people. I'm so tired of people like the guys on the All In podcast that are talking about, let's bring back stop and frisk.
Right.
When, this person who lives in Atherton, California is a fucking billionaire, one of the founders of Facebook, who sends his kids to private schools, is like calling out for stop and frisk to come back again when his investments and his how he exists in life is one of the reasons why there's this rise of homelessness and this cartel that's in San Francisco in the first place. Like, he is inadvertently the reason why. So he wants to go and have those innocent victims of his choices be
Basically
like
brutally
assaulted by a police state.
Right.
You know, and so I could see where your frustration was when he said that, for sure. I was appalled.
I was appalled too.
Fucking dictator.
Because his senses were violated when he had to be among the
when he had to like drive through in his
walk through the open, as he called it, as he had described it, the open drug market.
The open drug market.
And
right. So and then So it's the same attitude. It's like these people will sit there and talk about, how important it is to invest in 501c3s that create wraparound services that give, six-figure incomes to people with marketing degrees who will claim to help the poor or the indigent or the drug addicted or the homeless, but they don't. This is what David Graeber called a bullshit job.
Right.
They exist only to exist. They don't exist to do the things that they claim.
Right.
And he's part of the problem. Like, he invests in those programs anyway and gets a tax break because of it.
To be fair, he is criticizing these things, but
he's also criticizing those things, even though he gets a tax break from them.
Right. And they're also
they're
also part of the whole idea of the opportunity zone idea, right?
Sure.
That we're under. But the other thing, though, that he mentioned, and I wanted to get to this because I mentioned it earlier, I kind of want to come back to this. He's talking about this open air market, this open air drug market, and, people like half clothed in the, or half naked or whatever in the streets, and then all of them, like a bunch of them.
A third of them.
Yeah, and he was saying a third of them were wearing balaclavas.
Balaclavas.
And it's like, Julie and I were like, huh? Why would people who are like half naked and shooting up in front of everybody like really care about their identity?
Exactly.
Right? Like being identified. Because he said that. He's like, they were wearing balaclavas so they couldn't be identified.
It's a fucking CIA operation,
exactly.
You idiot.
Right.
Like, that's your first tell right there. Whenever the identity, in a color revolution, whenever the identity is covered, whenever the person's face is covered. We saw this in Hong Kong. We see it in France all the time. We see it in various other protest movements here in the United States.
Well,
that's probably a Soros-funded, but most definitely a CIA-backed, operation in order to foment.
Right. Well, it's like Antifa, right?
Yeah.
Using the black bloc tactics to support an undercover operation.
Right. So
like
they were sitting there talking, like
operation.
The way that they were describing it, they were using the same language and the same terminology, as they were appalled, living in their fucking mansions in the sky, and living by the sea, and they have no clue about reality, right? They were describing the situation in San Francisco, basically Skid Row now. They were describing it in the same way that people who understand what covert operations look like that are funded by the government and funded by the CIA. They were using the same terminology and the same language. Right. I was like, you guys don't even know
exactly what you're talking
that you're describing a CIA operation.
Right.
You are literally describing a color revolution and you don't even know it.
Right. Because of the privilege, right?
Yeah, because of the privilege. Yeah. They're just so this podcast has been, it's actually not only been an hour. Like, it feels like we've been doing this for 3 hours, but it's really only been a little bit over an hour. Usually we go for about 90 minutes, but we're recording this on Good Friday. Mm-hmm. It's the weekend of Easter.
Do you want to talk about the recent violence that's been erupting in San Francisco?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of dudes that have been.
So one was roughed up, and the other one was killed.
Murdered.
Murdered.
And these were fucking mob hits.
I agree.
This was not okay. The only reason we can say for sure is that it wasn't the homeless crowd that did this, is because homeless people are either so drugged out, or they're so hungry, or they're just trying to stay out of the way. Mm-hmm. The homeless people that we knew, and that we knew on a first name basis when we were living in San Francisco, they were very good about staying out of the way. Well, they would disappear, and then, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, and even if people were getting more aggressive, they're not doing what they're not
multiply stabbing someone in the Marina District, where there are no homeless encampments, 45 times in the face. That's not their MO.
The stabbing took place in a safe part of South Market downtown.
Okay, that's the guy that died. And then the second stabbing took place.
He wasn't stabbed. He was beat up. And there's no fucking way a homeless person in San Francisco has the physical ability to do this.
No, these were mob hits. And San Francisco, as beautiful as it is, and as how much money as it is, it comes with a price. Mm-hmm. I think that most people who are in, like, brick and mortar industry in San Francisco in somewhere or other, at least how it was before, but, you know, the venture capitalists, of course, would argue with me. But I would say that a lot of people that live and work in the industry, where they have a brick and mortar, and maybe they have like a cigar shop, or a corner store, or some kind of market, I believe they got their funding not from a 501c3, or not from what's called the new shiny government-backed mob, but the actual mob. Like, San Francisco is not as... Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Everyone when they think of the mob, they think of New York or Chicago or New Jersey. No, there's a mob faction in San Francisco that's very real.
And they're different. There's the Russian mafia, there's the Irish mob, there's the Italian mafia.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I had a friend who had a little twee shop in North Beach on Columbus for years, and 3 doors up from her place, there was this I don't know what, I never went in, probably for good reason, and it was like a sandwich shop, deli kind of place, and I can't remember the name of it. You would have recognized it if you saw the sign. Yeah. It's been long gone.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, that's basically where the mafia dudes hang out.
Exactly.
She knew, because she lived, she worked in the neighborhood.
Right.
And she lived in Russian Hill, near where I was living for a while there, and her business was in North Beach, so it wasn't far away. So I mean, she saw this, and she saw what was going on. You know, so she knew that there was mafioso types.
Yeah, and then of course, like, for I went out on like 2 dates with a San Francisco fireman, and he was like pure Irish, right? And his whole family was like, Irish, and they had all been, either firemen or cops in San Francisco for like multiple generations. And he was telling me that, it's such an undercurrent of mafia. Like, there's the Irish mafia, and then there's the Italian mafia. And so people don't understand.
There's Vietnamese,
gangs and stuff. Right. Yeah, exactly. So people don't understand, especially these yahoos on the All In podcast that are just like, hey, we just should go after and crack the skulls of the homeless.
Right.
For these hit jobs. Like, these were hit. Yeah. So Bob Lee, the founder of Cash App, he probably took a little money from some sketchy character, not realizing it. And it had the markings of a mob hit. Like, anybody entrenched in the San Francisco, like, world, especially if you're a fireman or a cop, they know about this. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then, of course, Pagliani, I think was his last name. Yeah. He was the commissioner for the
fire commissioner.
He was the fire department commissioner in San Francisco. He got beat within an inch of his life. First of all, good luck finding a fire department commissioner, or a fire department, or a fireman with an Italian last name. They're all Irish in San Francisco. So I thought that was weird right there.
Unless they're Chinese or
so
some
there's
other thing,
something,
but yeah.
at least back when,
Yeah.
back when I was not dating, but I went out on 2 dates with this guy, and he just filled me in about the fire department. I was like, oh my God, it's like the mafia.
Right.
He's like, exactly, it's the Irish mafia. So these idiots who are going on and on and on about, like, let's go after the homeless.
Right. Well, and that's the thing.
In the marina?
Well,
are you kidding me?
But see, that's the story that is said. They literally said that he was beaten by a homeless person in the marina. Now, let's explain to our audience. The Marina District in San Francisco is about the most milquetoast white bread part of town you could possibly be in, except for maybe in Pacific Heights, which is the hilly version of the marina, which is the flat version of so the wealthy, the ultra wealthy live in Pacific Heights, and the wealthy sort of investor class, types live in the marina
or Seacliff.
Well, Seacliff is yet another class. I mean, that's the very wealthy as well.
Yeah, like Robin Williams lived in Seacliff.
Right.
Yeah.
But like the marina is sort of like upper middle class to executive level types, right?
Right.
That work for like banking, organizations, whatever. They're not the presidents and the CEOs, which live in Pacific Heights. But it's still it's a Tony part. It's a Tony part of town, not Tawny. Tony part of town. It's the part of town. It's the part of town that you saw burning after the 1989 earthquake, when everybody thought the entire city was burning, when it was really just like about 3 blocks of the Marina District.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is not
right,
like,
and this is not a and it has always been. Maybe not as much now because I think more corporations have moved in, like the Gap and stuff like that. But it had always been a mom and pop.
Apple.
Apple is there, right?
There now.
But like the stores
the
stores on Chestnut Street, the main drag of the marina.
It's always been like really cute, like bars and little cafes.
And it's always been like family-owned kind of businesses, right? Now the corporations have moved in. There's the Gap, there's Starbucks, there's Pete's, there's
high-end,
there's
high-end couture clothing and things like that.
Yeah.
It's funny how like every neighborhood looks exactly like the marina that we go to that has that like footprint. Mm-hmm. Like we went into Shady Side a few times in Pittsburgh in the 4 or 5 years that we lived here, and I'm just like, whoa, am I in the marina? Whoa, what happened? So, the only difference is that there's no cool, like, beautiful bay to walk to.
Right. So you can see the Golden Gate Bridge from this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they're trying to recreate these little neighborhoods in other cities.
Right.
Good luck. But so the story is not that a bunch of homeless people went and cracked the skulls of these assholes. Like these were mob hits. Mm-hmm. And then not only that, but on Twitter, there is like this rumor mill going around that the person who used the pipe to crack the skull of the San Francisco fire commissioner. He's no longer the fire commissioner. He was a former fire commissioner. Right. That should be stated.
Right.
He was a former.
He's not the current. Yeah.
That they were caught on camera. It's like, really? Seriously? So this mob hit, happened, and then they're just going to use some innocent passerby and say, "Oh, it's that guy."
Right.
Come on.
Classic. Well, and that's the other thing too. It's like they'll never solve the murder of this dude,
Bob Lee, the Cash App dude.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the San Francisco Police Department is completely incompetent.
Well, no, I don't think they're incompetent. I think
they're incompetent.
Well, I think that it's more
they're on
about
the take.
Well, exactly. They're run by the mob.
Right.
Like,
but I mean, for everyday stuff, they're incompetent.
Oh, for everyday stuff, they're incompetent. Sure.
I remember there was a murder that took place on Haight Street, and for years it was like, they finally closed the investigation because they could never find who did it.
Right.
Some guy was murdered in his own apartment, and like the police department was so fucking incompetent they couldn't even
Yeah.
Now, that's a needle in a haystack, but still.
Yeah.
And granted, we all grew up with cop shows, and there's still lots of detective shows on and procedurals and stuff, and they always find who did it. So I guess that I am sort of biased in that way, but I also know that, like, anytime I've ever called the SFPD for any sort of, like, break-in or whatever the case may be, they're just, like, completely, like, checked out, not interested, and, like, completely incompetent.
Yeah. And there was something else I was going to say about them, but I can't quite remember, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, Fajita-gate. Fajita-gate was so funny.
You brought that up this morning. I was like,
you're like, what? I don't even.
I remember the label, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh God, it was so long ago, and basically everybody just had such a field day with the incompetence of the cops because of it. Let's look it up really quickly. Fajita-gate. Because it's too hilarious. Yeah, Fajita-gate. It has a Wikipedia entry. I mean, that's how crazy it is, right? It was a series of legal and political incidents in San Francisco that began with a street fight outside a neighborhood bar between 3 off-duty San Francisco police officers and 2 other local residents over a bag of fajitas.
Right, it was at the 500 Club in the Mission.
Right, leading to numerous civil and criminal complaints, police misconduct allegations, and eventually the resignation of the city's chief of police and deputy chief of police.
Wow.
Fajita-gate. It took place, what year was this? 2002.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I remember when it happened.
Yeah.
I was living there and, like, watching the news cover it. Fajita-gate. And the latest in Fajita-gate, it's like, really? Like, this was so funny.
This is like really reaching for a label.
So... But Fajita-gate, if you really think about it, like, it led to numerous civil and criminal complaints, police misconduct, and so that it began with a street fight outside a neighborhood bar. Well, this sounds like exactly how, like, the war in Iraq was started.
Right.
Like, it began literally, like, and I learned this from Jeremy Scahill, actually, that the war in Iraq literally started with, like, a minor collision on the street, like a car collision. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, Eric Prince's BlackRock was swooping in, and next thing you know, you have a full-blown war. Right. Like, yeah, so...
You had shock and awe.
Yeah, so
right.
This is what we're talking about, is when I say life is a series of 9/11s,
well...
It's like these little incidences, like, you know, a couple of off-duty San Francisco police officers fighting over a bag of chips... Yeah. Leads to the destruction of the department.
Right.
Like, leads to the chief of police
right.
and the deputy chief of police having to resign.
Right. Right.
Like, this is what I'm talking about. You know, like, these are interventionists. These are little tiny itty bitty little teensy weensy little regime change operations. And
little tiny color revolutions.
Little tiny color revolutions.
The Arab Spring began with something just as mundane. So this is why I was born against the mundane.
Exactly.
This is why I always say, it's not the big shit that's going to hurt you, it's the mundane.
Right. So every time something mundane comes up and you're like, why is the news covering something about off-duty police officers getting pissed off about a bag of chips?
Right.
Being stolen from them.
Right.
And that's when your antennas should go up and be like, uh-oh, we're in for another little regime change.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened.
Right. And so that was a bunch of theater
that
turned
theater.
into something that, yes, they basically, well, we can't go out of our way and, like, kill the people.
No.
But we can certainly take them out of their position.
And that was back then in 2002. That was 21 years ago. Mm-hmm. So now they've it's been escalated and turned over so many times that, guess what? You can go crack the skull of people. You can kill them. You can beat them within an inch of their life. Because
well, you have other scapegoats you can choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, we are being picked off in so many different ways. Not only are we being, like, picked off through this military operation, through the, you know, basically the health apparatus, which is a militarized health apparatus, which is designed to target and murder people,
right.
or financialize people. But also, we are being picked off in other ways. We're being picked off, like, through something like Fajita Gate, which is reinventing itself over and over and over again in various cities all throughout the country. Like there is no stone unturned. Like, they're going through the schools, they are going through the churches, they are going through your local municipal bodies to pick people off one by one by one. So, you know, because we live among the poors, we see this, like, really obviously, like, we see it. But if you're people like the all-in guys who live in their gated communities and in their perfect little pristine, you know, worlds made of money and privilege, they're not seeing the real world.
Right.
And I mean, so I said, don't you fucking dare punch down. Stop punching down. You're the ones to blame, and if you don't want to be the ones to blame, then you better start blaming the people above you, because there's definitely people above them.
Oh, absolutely.
That are part of this.
Oh no, they're as middle management as anyone.
Exactly.
You know, they're just upper echelons middle management.
Yeah.
Right.
No, they're sweating bullets too, just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and so that's another thing about the IHR, and then we can wrap it up. This has been a really fun conversation, but we're hitting the 1 hour 30-minute mark. Is that the international health regulations are going after everybody, even corporations.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's so funny about it. And I mean, not funny, but it's like, it is kind of funny, because
the corporations, in some ways, the corporations were duped as much as anybody.
Of course.
You know.
Yeah.
Right.
With this whole COVID operation.
And the whole, and coming back to where we started, right? Where, you know, because like all of a sudden in 2020, like, so we started with COVID in March, right? And then by July of 2020, we're like looking at, or June even, we're looking at websites that are talking about white supremacy. Corporate websites talking about white supremacy.
So that was in the summer of 2020 when Black Lives Matter
after the Floyd
social operation, after the fake George Floyd color revolution type of tactic
where
took place.
Where the police cars license plates said
police.
And they're like standing around, you know, like almost whistling with their hands in their pockets with their knee on this guy's face.
Exactly.
Right? And it's like, oh, come on.
Right. It was such theatrics, and how nobody could see that. Like, well, actually, I think everybody saw it.
They just didn't want to admit to it.
The media, the corporate media, the establishment media is paid to basically gaslight and say, oh my God, look at this terrible thing that's happening. Meanwhile, the people are looking at the terrible thing and going, it looks like theater, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that they basically didn't, just like people don't want to admit that the military are attacking their own people.
Exactly.
They didn't want to think that this was actually taking place on camera. It's like, who's recording this? What's going on?
Right.
Why does that police department license plate say police? Why do they have hands in their pockets?
Right.
And just like looking around while this thing is going on. So they're basically killing a guy while like just kind of whistling and holding. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, we had been seeing up to that point, we've been seeing videos of cops just like outright shooting people.
Right.
You don't think that that's just what would have happened?
Right.
Like they just shot the guy? No, they put their knee on him.
Come on.
And like choked him. Come on.
Yeah. No, this is really
that was bullshit.
We're in a really bad place right now.
And that was a color revolution.
Right. So this is a sign that you've lost your country, is when these different things just keep reinventing themselves over and over and over and over and over again. And so the problem is that I say this to brick walls, and people in social media like respond to it as if it's real. You know, and it's not. It's you're in the middle of a regime change. I mean, you've already lost your country. Like, if you have somebody who is, you know, going back to the very beginning of this when we were talking about Chris Hedges talking to Derek Brose, right? You have somebody who understands fully the dangers of posse comitatus, or the lifting of posse comitatus, or the destruction of posse comitatus. He understands that, you know, the worst thing that could possibly happen is when the military like wages violence on its own citizens, like unabated, like with no, there's nothing to stop that from happening. And that happened. And the military is proud of it and has announced it. Yes, we are deploying countermeasures on the United States citizenry. Like, it's literally written on their website. And they are proudly announcing that they are treating every American citizen outside of due process as if they are domestic terrorists. Right. You had the destruction of Posse Comitatus, Mr. Hedges. Do you not understand this? Like, why are you not making this?
Because it's not literal bombs. Because it's not literally like them kicking in your door. See, this is what everybody expects. This is why I keep saying it's the mundane.
Right.
It's everybody thinks that they're going to come in and kick in your door and take you away, like on those propaganda videos that came out of China, right? Where they like, hauled people off to these like detention centers and like isolated them. That's the propaganda.
That's not real.
That's not real. And that's
meanwhile,
what everybody,
people in China are doing fine. They're not.
But everybody was worried about FEMA coming in and taking over and doing all these things, right? And none of that happened.
And
right?
a social credit system.
Yeah, no, exactly. And none of that happened. And so because we're not seeing warlike tactics, the strategies and the stratagems or whatever are still taking place.
Right.
It's just they're robots in disguise, right?
Yeah.
They are not doing the tactics that everybody expected them to.
No, they're going to do it through your corporation. So they're not recognizing
them as military operations.
Yeah,
right?
They don't understand that the military is everywhere. It's like in your church, in your school, at your corner store.
And when we were talking about
it's everywhere.
When we were talking about the fireworks that were going on,
it's a military operation,
right? Because we were saying they are not going to bomb neighborhoods, but they're going to do a simulacrum of bombing.
Yeah, so we had months and months and months of fireworks that were going on in our neighborhood, and it only affected the poors, right? In our neighborhood from like 10 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. Constant. In fact, we would be recording for video essays, and we would have to stop recording our script
because of the fireworks
and the bombing campaign. This was a bombing campaign.
Right.
But they couldn't. But they know that. But they know that somebody like Chris Hedges, if they were to drop real bombs, then Chris Hedges would be made right.
Right.
So they have to use everything else.
Right. And so they have the same effect on the population.
Sure, everyone's traumatized.
Except for property destruction. Right. Everything but property destruction.
And property destruction happens with benign neglect.
Right.
So you get property destruction anyway.
Right. It's just at a slow pace. And so people like Chris Hedges don't recognize it for what it is.
No. The military has, waged war on its own people. That is what happened. That is what it says in the documentation. Congress is okay with it. Congress has supported it and passed it. The World Health Organization is in fealty to the Bank of International Settlements. And the Department of Defense is like, how can we help?
Right.
How can we help you kill and maim and financialize people?
Right.
And what sort of kickbacks do we get by doing so? Like, war is forever.
Yep.
You're living in a constant state of war, and a lot of people don't realize that. So
that's why everybody's so on edge.
And they don't know why.
Why. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Please share this if you feel like you got something out of it. Go ahead and share it with your friends. We will drop this.
All 2 of them.
We are recording this on Good Friday, and so we'll drop it in a week. And we hope everyone has a good week ahead of you.
All right.
Has a good weekend. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.